Good evening and welcome to Fresno State Small Business University and the United States Department of Agriculture's webinar on the Corona Food Assistance Program 2. We are so excited to have you joining us today. My name is Brian Salcedo, and I am a Regional Business Development Specialist with the Fresno State Small Business University, providing technical assistance to small business startups as well as existing businesses. We wanted to put this webinar together to inform you about the programs available that provide farmers, ranchers, and producers recovery assistance in the case that they were impacted by the COVID-19 market disruptions. Before we start our presentation, we would like to take a moment to remind everyone joining us today to feel free to drop your questions in the chat box at any time. Later during this segment, our presenters will be answering questions that you may have. So don't be shy, folks. We encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas with us. I will be your producer for this presentation, along with my hosts from the USDA, Navdeep Dillon and Juan Alvarez.
All right, good evening. Thanks for joining today and actually taking up time out of your busy schedules. And some of you are probably, going to be a little late for dinner today. So thank you so much for joining. And so today I'm going to talk to you about our USDA's Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. Okay, let's see. Can you see my slides? Yep.
Yes.
Yep,
okay,
there
perfect.
it is.
All right, perfect. All right, so as Brian said, my name is Navdeep Dillon. I'm the Farm Program Chief for California. I've been with the agency for a long time, and so today we're just going to discuss the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program 2. We did have a program earlier, and that program was more targeted towards specific commodities and a time frame that we were looking at. Coronavirus 2 is more generalized. It's pretty much applicable to all of the commodities that are produced commercially in California. So let's go to the next slide here. All right, so CFAP2 provides assistance to producers for commodities that were impacted by the 2020 coronavirus program, coronavirus food assistance. And basically this program is for market disruptions, farm level price declines, and because there were significant marketing costs that producers may have incurred. The sign-up period for this program is currently open. If you haven't applied already or you're thinking about applying, you're trying to determine whether you are eligible or not. Today, I'm going to go over just the basic requirements, what the form looks like, what commodities are eligible, and what information you'll be certified application. So as I said, the application period is currently open. It's probably going to be closing soon. We don't have a deadline yet, but if you are interested, please do contact an FSA office near you and start the application process. So who is eligible? Producer who is in the business of farming at the time of the application, and your AGI cannot exceed $900,000 unless 75% of your income comes from farming and ranching. So if you do exceed AGI, however, majority of your income comes from farming or ranching, and you're able to certify to that, then you would still your AGI is over the 900,000. So the producers have to have risk in the commodity that they're applying for benefits on. There are three different categories that we're looking at. There's a price trigger crops. So those crops we're looking at where there was a price decline between January, mid-January to late July. Flat rate crops, and then there's a specialty crops, which are the sales-based crops. And so on the price trigger crops, the crop been determined eligible, so you don't have to show price. You specifically as a grower do not have to show a price decline. Based on market analysis, the agencies already determined that those commodities had a price decline. Okay. Producer means a person or legally someone who shares in the production and the risk of the commodity that you're applying for. So if the producer is not in business currently, then at this time you are not eligible. Okay, the application form is called AD 3117 CFAP2 application. You would be filing one application nationwide. So if you participate if you grow crops in Fresno County, then you also grow some crops in Kern County, and you go over to Nevada, you've got some livestock that you graze there. You'll be filing for all of their operations that are farmed under the name that you're farming under. You don't need to file different applications, different offices. It'll be one application nation. Producers on the application, you are able to certify to the information that's requested. However, if the county committee or a national review or an OIG review, Office of Inspector General review, any type of a general accounting office review, if we request documentation, you would have to provide that to support your certification. Except for unless you're a contract grower, you do have to provide your contract. Okay, so this is what the application looks like. So if you go look at the top of the application, it asks you for the county, the state, the county. It already has a year pre-filled application number that's assigned by the system. Once we put the application in, it'll assign a number, so you don't need to put anything there. Every producer, you should review Part A of the application. This is basically, it's a detailed of what you're certifying to, what your responsibilities are, your certification that the information that you're providing is true and correct, and that if we ask you for additional documentation, you will provide that. And if that documentation does not support your certification, then you would be required to pay the money back. So Part 2 of the application is just your name of the operation that you're farming under. If you're farming as an individual, you're going to put your name in. If you're farming as a corporation, LLC, whatever your operation looks like, that's what you're going to put it in. And the Part C is for dairy. So if you're a dairy producer where you produce milk, then you're going to fill out this section of the application. So you're going to put in what your marketings were between April and August 31st. We'll get into more of the details. And then if you're a producer where you have eggs or broilers that you're producing, then you're going to complete Part D. And then Part E is, Part E is for livestock. So if you're a livestock producer, then you're going to complete Part E. Part E, and then Part F is for sales commodities. So this is where all the specialty crops, if you're a specialty crop producer, specialty crop meaning your fruits and vegetables, your nursery, floriculture, and all that information. So all of the commodities in this section are sales-based commodities. So when you look at the different items, we're going to look at the sales of 2019, not 2020, okay? And then we have your acreage-based crops. So this is where you'll have to certify what acreage growing for some specific crops, which are in the acreage-based categories. And then Part H is for contract growers, and there's certain livestock producers who produce the livestock under a contract. That's what that section is for them. Part I is where this program has a payment limitation of $250,000. However, if you're a corporation, LLC, LP, such entities, you are able to increase your limitation up to $750,000. The payments are based on your certification. So not everybody is going to get $250,000. Not everybody's going to get $750,000. So depending on your operation, what you grow, what your sales are, what your inventory is, depending on what you're looking at, your payment will depend depend on that. And that part J is your certification that the information that you're providing is true and correct. Okay, and part K is that's where the county office would approve your application. Okay, so we'll look at more detail for the dairy provisions. This is part C of the application. So this is basically a dairy operation that commercially markets milk from cows in the United States at the time of the application. So we're looking at 2020. So it would be the milk that you were producing in 2020. And you're certifying to your commercially marketed milk for April, May, June, July, and August 2020, or any milk that also qualifies. And then the agency will estimate what you would have marketed milk for September, October, November, and December. And then based on the national marketings and what the national rates are, then the payment would be calculated based on that. Okay, so again, this is a snapshot of part C. Part 7 is where you're going to put in the total number of pounds that you've delivered or marketed between April and August. And then, and if you are no longer in the business of producing milk, and what is the date that you stop producing milk, that's the information that's requested, and everything else the agency will take care of. Again, the payment rate for the milk is it's about $1.20 a hundredweight. And then, so CFAP payments will be calculated based on taking a number of production that you 2 times payment rate. Okay, for eggs, we're looking at, so we're looking at shelled eggs, liquid eggs, dried, and frozen eggs. Okay, all of those are eligible. So for liquid eggs, for all of egg production, you will be self-certifying to your 2019 calendar year certification. So anything that you've produced during the calendar year 2019, that's the information that you're going to provide. If you're a producer who just started producing in 2020, you can certify to your 2020 sales. So this would be only provisions for new producers. Anyone who's been producing for many, many years, then we're looking at your 2019 production. For broilers, same thing. We are looking for 2019 total broiler production. And if you were new in 2020, then we will look at your 2020 information. Again, so this is where for broilers, we're going to tell us what your total production was in head counts. And then for the eggs, it's for dried eggs, frozen eggs, and liquid eggs, it's how many pounds you produced. And then for shell eggs, it would be by dozen. For livestock, the eligible livestock are those, this is a price trigger commodity. So this is where we've already determined that there was a price decline between January and July. You don't have to prove that, but you do have to tell us. So the only types of eligible animals are beef cattle, hogs and pigs, and sheep. Any cattle that you're using for breeding are not eligible. So this is only livestock, only cattle, pigs, or sheep that are where you would have marketed them into the market. What you're certifying to is your highest inventory on a selected date between April 16th and August 31. So you pick a date and you tell us how many head you had of the animal that you're in the business of selling. Okay, so here that's where you're going to put in your highest inventory. You could pick, June 10th. August 1st, August 31st, April 16th, whichever date, and then you're going to give us that production, your inventory of the total number of animals you had in inventory at that time. Okay, depending on if you've got all 3, then you're going to certify to all 3. If you've got 1, then that's all you're going to certify to. And these are the payment rates per head, depending on which livestock you are in the business of producing or selling. And so we're not differentiating between ages or livestock, where it's all weight and ages are the same. It's the same payment rate. For sales commodities, this is a huge category here for us. So for specialty crops under sales categories, we're looking at sales, aquaculture sales, including mollusks. And then your specialty crops is all those crops that are eligible for CFAP1. That was all the nut crops, and strawberries and mushrooms and all of those different crops. This time around, pretty much all the crops are eligible for sales commodity, under sales specialty crops. So you can go to farmers.gov/CFAP. There we have a complete list of crops that are eligible under the specialty crops. Nurseries are also eligible for floriculture. Livestock, there's a list of livestock which are not in the livestock section. They're in the sales commodity section, and those are listed there. Everything from alpacas to ostriches, goats, ducks, and there's a list there on the screen for you. Again, we'll also have some miscellaneous commodities which are not picked up under any other categories. So those are Christmas trees, goat milk, mohair, mink, wool, tobacco. We normally don't have tobacco in California. I'm not aware of any tobacco producers. So that's probably more for other South states. So following are not eligible for CFAP2. As I said, breeding stock, equine, companion animals or comfort animals, and livestock raised for hunting or game purposes. So we're looking for only animals that are eligible where you would have marketed them or had a production of them. So producers will self-certify to their 2019 calendar year eligible sales. So we're looking at sales that you would have, money that you received from January 1 through January 1, 1999 to December 31, 1999. Sorry, not 19. And so 2019 sales. So doesn't matter which year that income was from, if you received it during the calendar year of 2019, you can consider that as eligible under this category. So we are looking at just sales of the raw product. So if there was any value added for the product, you are not to count that as part of your sale. So let's say you had almonds, and you had almonds, and you put chocolate on them. You sold them as chocolate covered almonds. The only sale that's eligible is the raw almond. So you would have to determine what the value is of the raw almond before you added the chocolate to it and sold it in a cute little bag or whatever. And so you have to be able to figure out how much of that sale was for the raw almond itself. Okay, and we can, if you have a question, we can look at that. So in here, so we're looking at, so if somebody began farming in 2020 and had no sales in 2019, you would certify to your actual sales for 2020 at the time of the application in lieu of your 2019 sales, similar to other commodities that we've discussed earlier. And we would look to see whether what you're certifying to is reasonable for the time period that you actually marketed, were in the business of producing and marketing the crop. So there's what the categories are listed there. So under, if you look at under crops, so that would be all of your crops. So if you have almonds, you've got strawberries, you've got broccoli, you're going to put all of that, all the sales from all of those under just the crops category. You don't have to fill out more than one application. You just lump it all together and include it in that section. So the sales for the sales commodities, the following table has what the payment factors are. So for the first $49,990 in sale, you'll get 10.6% in benefits. But from $50 to $99,999, the factor will be 9.9, and then for the zero and so forth. So any sales over the $2 million, any sales over $1 million would be paid at 8.8%. And remember, there's a payment limitation, so that's that always comes into play here. So here's an example. So if a producer had $105,000 in sales between January 1 and December 31, 2019, from broccoli and spinach, and both are eligible sales. And so the first 49,000 would be at 49,999 would be at 10.6%. Payment is $5,299.89. The next 50,000 would be at 9.9%, and then the $5,100 remaining would be at 9.7%, for a total payment of $10,735. So if you're trying to figure out what your estimated payment would be, that's how you could calculate it. So sales, the acreage-based crops are in two different categories. So you have price trigger crops and flat rate crops, and that you would be certifying to in part G of the application. And as I said, they're both acreage-based crops, so you would have to file an acreage report. And in order to file an acreage report, you do have to establish a farm and a track record with the Farm Service Agency. And most of the producers who are in this category, or who grow these crops that are in this category, most often are producers that participate with FSA under our other programs. So that's definitely something that we may already have on file, or you would be able to file one now. So eligible acre means the producer's share of the 2020 determined acres, or if there aren't any determined acres, then whatever you certified to on the 578, which is a report of acreage, with some exclusions, of course. If you had failed acreage, then that's not considered, it's not eligible. So specific ineligible intended uses. So if you graze the acreage, you cut it for green manure, you left it standing, or whether if it's experimental crop, prevented planted, meaning you were not able to plant the crop, or volunteer, all of those are not eligible intended uses or crop statuses. So for the price trigger crops and the flat rate crops, we will be pulling the information from our system based on what's been certified. Okay. So the price trigger crops are listed here. So we have barley, corn, sorghum dual purpose, soybeans, sunflower, upland cotton, and wheat. And again, with corn, there are specific types that are eligible, and then the intended uses. So there's the payment calculation is a little complicated for the price trigger crops, in that we're looking at the producer's history of what their historical yield is versus what the county averages are. So there's a formula that we would use to figure out what the actual payment rate is, and if that payment rate is less than $30, then the producer, we would pay them at the $30 rate. And so if they're calculated payment based on their APHs or historical yield, if the payment is higher, then they would get that higher payment rate. Flat rate crops are all of these crops listed here. So alfalfa, buckwheat, canola, oats, peanuts, quinoa, all of these different rice. These are all flat rate crops. So depending on how many acres you farmed in 2020, times the payment rate of $30 would be your payment. And so you are required to, as I said, you are required to certify your acreage, and you would do that at the time of the application. For contract growers, producers, contract grower is a producer, meaning who grows or produces an eligible commodity under contract on behalf for or on behalf of another person or entity. The contract producer does not have ownership interest in the commodity, but is not entitled to a share of the sales from the commodity. Okay, so you're basically growing these I guess these eligible commodities, which I'll get to right here. So we have chickens, broilers, pellets or layers, eggs, shell, dried or frozen, and turkeys, and hogs and pigs. So if you grow these or you produce these livestock under a contract, then you are eligible, but how we pay you is based on your the loss in revenue between 2019 and 2020. And we're looking at specific dates of January 1, 2020 and December 27, 2020. Why not December 31? December 2020 and December 27th is because that's when the legislation was passed. So that's what the cutoff date was. So for both years, for 2020 and 2019, we'd be comparing your revenue between those years. I mean, that time frame. Okay, kind of went over this already. So again, the eligible producer, so the contract grower would certify to their revenue for 2019 and 2020, and then we would figure out what the difference is. And this is where the producer would certify to their 2019 sales for whatever commodity whether it's chickens, broilers, whatever commodity that they're growing under contract, their 2019 revenue and 2020 revenue, and then we would figure out what the difference is between the two, and we factor it by 80%. And then that would give you what the eligible payment is for the grower. So the application and the additional forms that are needed, as I said before, the application for CFAP2 is the AD 3117. In addition to filing the application, you are required to file a 902, which is the farm operating plan, and you only have to complete certain sections of that form. CCC 901 is required if you have an entity within an entity. Let's say you have a partnership that's producing the commodity. However, within the partnership, one of the members is an LLC. So you would complete a 901 for the LLC, telling us who's in that. So depending on what your entity setup is, you would complete this additional form. CCC 941, which is you're certifying to your average AGI. And this is the form that you would use. And every person who is applying for benefits and members of entities are required to complete this form. And if any member exceeds the AGI, they would not be eligible for the payment, unless they could certify that 75% of their income came from farming or ranching, and they would complete the form CCC 942 in addition to the CCC 941. You do have to certify to your highly erodible and wetland provisions on the AD 1026 form. Payment limitation, as I said before, CFAP2, the payment limitation is $250,000 per person or legal entity, and a separate payment limitation. This is a separate payment limitation from CFAP1. So if you applied for CFAP1, it's received some benefits. You come and apply for CFAP2, you have a separate limitation. So optional increases, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So corporations, LLCs, LPs, trusts, and estates can increase their payment limitation if they have stockholders, members, heirs, beneficiaries who contribute 400 plus of active personal labor or active personal management to the operation. So you can increase your payment limitation there. Again, if there are two member who are providing the 400 hours of active personal labor, active personal management, your payment limitation would increase to 500,000. If there's 3 members that are providing such inputs, then your payment limitation would be $750,000. And again, as I mentioned before, you have to your payment has to compute to that based on your certification. So if your payment, based on what you're certified to, you're supposed to get $1 million, and you've got a corporation that has 5 members who provide active personal labor of 400 hours and plus, then the maximum that you could get would be $750,000. If you're a individual person and you're a huge operation, you farm it all yourself, you do everything yourself, and your payment calculates out to $500,000. The maximum you're going to get is $250,000. Okay, so just kind of some of the program limitations there. Again, if you want to, you can go to farmers.gov /CFAP. There's videos there on how to calculate payments. We have a 1-800 number that you can contact, 1-800-877-508. Oops, there's a number missing here. I will get that added here. And you can call that number. It's a call center, and they'll answer your initial questions. You can apply online. You can visit your local FSA office. You will have to call and make an appointment and answer a few questions related to your exposure to COVID. And you could possibly visit an office in person, or you can work with them via email. So go to farmers.gov, and down at the bottom, you're able to search for a service center near you. And then also on farmers.gov and also at fsa.usda.gov, we have fact sheets and general information available. And I think that's my last slide. Yep. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We can start with the first one.
Okay.
Are products like cheese and olive oil eligible?
No, because those are processed products. So any product that where it was a result of a process, then those are not eligible.
Okay. The second
However,
question.
the milk's eligible, and then your olive production would be eligible, but just not the oil.
Not the oil. Okay. The second question is, what is the definition of a contract producer? I actually think you answered that during the presentation.
Correct? Yeah, I did, but I can say it again. So contract producer is someone who is producing the commodities that were listed. I think it was hogs and pigs and chickens and turkeys under contract, and you get a contract from someone else, and you grow the animal, and then you give it back to them, and they give you a flat rate per head. You're not involved in the sale. You are just growing this livestock for someone.
Got it. The next question is, how do you determine the value of raw commodities such as olives for olive oil, especially if it is already processed at the first point of sale?
So the only person who would be eligible in that case is the person who grew the olives, and so if you're an olive grower and an olive processor, then there are several ways you can do that. You could possibly look to see what the average price is for a ton of olives before they're produced. And so you would have to, that would be one way to determine it. You could possibly look at, ask a UC extension person to assist you with that calculation. So it's up to you on how you come up with that figure. of the raw olives. But if you're a processor who purchases olives from growers and you process it into oil, then your purchased product is not eligible. It's only stuff that you grew and sold.
Very good. And the last question is: are breeders slash trainers for certified service animals for disabled or police slash military eligible?
No, they're not.
Can undocumented farmers apply?
So you do have to have a social security number, and you do have to provide a certification of your status on the application on the CCC 902.
Got it. Are ITINs eligible?
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Individual taxpayer identification number. I think it's like an alternative to the social security number.
I think we do have some foreign individuals who have interest in operations here use those EIN numbers. Yes, but you do have to provide the status. Otherwise, there are foreign person rules that apply. And so there's additional requirements that are in place. But if you are that person, you should talk to the local FSA office and they could provide you additional details.
Perfect. Okay, not seeing any questions. Did you want to give some closing thoughts, Navdeep?
Sure, of course. Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it, all of you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. You know, I believe that the enrollment deadline is going to be announced soon. So if you haven't applied and you believe that you're eligible, contact your local FSA and they can assist you with the application process. However, you know, don't wait too long because these deadlines come, and then if you miss a deadline, then that that can definitely delay the application process, and in certain cases you may not get paid at all. So if you're thinking that you are eligible, always apply. The worst that can happen is somebody might say no. And again, if you're ever, I'm sure you're in the business of farming, and if you ever run into a situation where you've lost your crop, you're needing some assistance with establishing some practices, or whatever whatever you need for farming, always contact FSA office. We are usually co-located with NRCS, Natural Resource and Conservation Service, and rural development in a lot of places. And so there's probably something that we can do to help you. We do have insurance programs for vegetable growers and small growers, in addition, that are outside of the regular crop insurance. And we do have, drought programs that are available. And so always check with FSA and to see how we can assist you in and help you stay in the business of farming, because that's what the agency's mission is to keep the farmers farming and have a secure and a steady supply of food. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Navdeep.
Just to build on what Navdeep was mentioning, part of today's webinar objective was to not only educate you about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program too, that's available, but to, as Navdeep mentioned, also let you know that there is technical assistance support that's being offered by the Fresno State Office of Community and Economic Development at no charge whatsoever to those that may be interested. So know that there is state and local support available. And we hope that you take advantage of that as well. Thank you, Brian, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Navdeep. And that concludes our presentation. So thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. We hope you learned some things along the way. And if you have any questions about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program 2, we encourage you to reach out to the USDA at any time or us at Fresno State Office and Community and Economic Development. A live recording of this presentation will be emailed and also uploaded to our YouTube page soon. So please be sure to check out your inboxes and spam folders for that link. We thank you again for joining us and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Until then, take care and have a good Memorial Day weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.